I want to talk about seeing. Not just vision as we understand it, but really what vision is all about. There's a saying, I'll believe it when I see it. But in truth, we see what we believe. And that's not just kind of a cool statement. It's a fact. We actually only can see what we already believed we would see. So we think that we're going to see something and then go, okay, well, now I believe it. Oh, now I've seen everything. One of those. Like, I see it, and then we think that when we see something, we will then determine our beliefs. That's not how it works. We actually already have beliefs that we don't want to know that we have, and then we manifest an outer world to confirm our beliefs. So that's called self-fulfilling prophecy. Except nobody wants to know what they actually believe. So when you lose a job, I see myself losing a job. Of course, seeing is a metaphor. I'm actually experiencing it in more levels than just eyes. But this is what's happening. I'm seeing it happen, but on some level, I already believed that's what needed to happen. And then it just happens to look that way on the outer life. So mystics and yogis throughout history have tried to explain, stop believing what your senses tell you. Not just your senses as we know them, but even the brain that translates them. They're all lying. Lying in the sense that our ego hijacks our mind. Then once the mind is hijacked, the brain will become the general to that emperor, dictator, the ego, and will make everything look just like in politics. I don't know, that just came up. But it's just like in politics, nothing's real. Nothing is what you think it is. Anything that involves money and power in our world, you can just see how it happens. You can't have really a fair sporting event. If money's involved, someone's going to be trying to buy somebody, pay somebody off. But this is all just a reflection of the ego. Our ego has already hijacked our mind. Now, it hijacks our mind. How could it do that? Where did it get the authority to do that? So the ego is like a force that we fight against? No. The ego is something one day we decided, we wondered what it would be like to be less than perfect. And when we did that, we created the imperfect thing called the ego. And we created it so well. How could you create it only halfway? We had to do it well. Because we're such magnificent creators beyond what the human mind can comprehend at this point. When Jesus said, when you tell a mountain to march, just go off into the ocean, it'll do it. The Buddha said you can split a mountain range in two. They're not saying it like just metaphorically. Oh, they mean like you can tell your problems in life, get out of the way and they'll move. That's true. But literally, you could split a mountain range with your mind. Not because you're asserting some sort of magic power. It's because the mind is actually believing the mountain's there. And it's not actually there. But if you could see what's really there, it would freak you out. So we stick a mountain there. We put something, like somebody quick, put something there. Oh, okay, there it is. Trees, mountains, okay. Whew, for a minute there, I was starting to see bliss. And now I see stuff. There we go. Mountains, stars, even the things you think are magnificent, they're still only for our ego-based amusement. It doesn't seem like it. Bless you. But even if you go, look at how vast the universe is. Well, that's wonderful. But the universe is actually just a dot in our collective mind. We're not a dot in the universe. It's a dot in our beliefs. We went, I wonder if, and it went, boom, the universe. But it didn't. It actually went, boop. One little dot. That's all it is. We're so grand in consciousness that we created the entire universe. And that is only making up one neuron, so to speak, in our mind. Can you imagine that? The entire universe that we can't even fathom when we're in our limited self. We can't fathom what the ocean depths would be like. Can't even understand a town. The intricacies and complexities of a leaf on a tree. But it's all the same. The universe never exploded, it imploded. It became a belief in our mind There's God, which you can't even understand the complexity or the vastness of that. We're part of God, which means we're vast, and you could call it complex if need be. It's not complex as in linear complexity. It's just vast beyond comprehension. So we're part of that. And somewhere, one little thought, what would life be like if we could separate, created the entire universe. But it didn't go anywhere. We think it did. The expanding universe isn't expanding. It's imploding. It's just looking more complex as though it's expanding, but it's actually just like a pseudo expansion. It's going in. It's just in our mind. And we can't go anywhere. It's not real, so it can't really happen. But in the meantime, we have forgotten our power. And you can hear motivational speakers talk about, you got to own your power. That's small potatoes, man, compared to the real McCoy. I mean, just you own your power, that's nothing. To just take back your power from people that kind of abuse you or use you, that's just a beginning. When you still think getting your power back is as grand as no longer letting people abuse you, wait till you do that. That's only the first step. Because once I say no to hurts and abuses, I start to say yes to the opposite. And when I say yes to the opposite, I'm not only taking back power, because taking back power, we did a talk on that a few weeks ago, that's sort of an illusion too, in some ways, the way humans interpret it. What's really going to happen is I'm going to take responsibility, not just for my addictions or flaws in my life. I'm talking about I'm going to take responsibility to go ahead and let myself be what God created me to be. So it's not just kind of eking a little power back from people. It means stepping into everything that I think I see has come from my belief systems. If I change my belief systems, what I see will start to change. Unfortunately, it doesn't match tit for tat, apples and apples right then. I could make a change in my belief systems today. How do you do that? Nothing does it like forgiveness. Forgiveness, not just because I'm telling you to just do a blanket, like, fine, I just forgive everybody. You have to feel it. You have to really believe it. Because you'll only see what you believe. So if you don't believe you've forgiven somebody, it won't look like it yet. But the way this universe works is even when you do it at noon on Monday or whatever, it doesn't mean at 12:01 you're going to start seeing the miracles. You might, but it's no guarantee. Because the ego has created this buffer, this contract of a buffer around us called time. And it can take a miracle that happened in this one instant, and it can stretch it over to 5 lifetimes before you get to see the effects of one positive thought. It's allowed to do that. We signed on for that. We gave it that power. But when we shift our minds, what we see starts to change, and you'll start to see miracles. In fact, when we shift our seeing completely, we'll realize there was never any time. So the very second we thought we separated and created a universe and complexities of life, death and all kinds of things that manifested, that'll all disappear, and all the healing will happen the very first second that we thought we could separate. In other words, there's no time. It's just a dot. It's just an illusion. But we seemingly stretched it out to seem like it lasts billions of years. So we have basically 2 types of seeing. There's seeing of the soul and seeing of the body, the ego. If we're in our ego minds, we're going to see with our eyes and our senses, mind you, but we're going to see an ego-based life. But there's some intricacies to this that are, I think, quite interesting. But if I'm in my ego mind, meaning if I'm in my fears, in my judgments, I already have that in my mind. What I see will come from what I believe. If I believe that you're lesser than me or I'm lesser than you, if I believe that I'm flawed or you're flawed, doesn't matter who it is you're judging, and doesn't matter how justified you think it is. It all has to go. We have to get to a state of, I don't know how to see anybody. Humanly speaking, that looks like a good person and that looks like a bad person. But I don't know. Now your head's going to say, yes you do, but that's not God talking. That's the ego saying, go ahead, bite from the tree of knowledge again. What do you think the tree of knowledge of good and evil means? I have accurate opinions of what's good and bad. When you eat from the tree of forgiveness, the tree of life, how are you going to do that if you can't say, I don't know? As soon as you say, I know what's right and wrong, I know what to attack and to judge and whatever, you're biting from that apple again. It takes humility. It takes the prayer of the divine feminine to say, I don't know. I think I know, but I don't know. When we say I don't know, it means I'm open to eating from another tree. I'm open to another thought system, one of love and forgiveness. When we're eating the apple, it's metaphor, when we're eating the fruit of the tree of judgment, we're going to see the effects of that. And we think we're seeing things like in the Garden of Eden story, we were hearing, that the Satan, the serpent's telling Eve and then Adam, if you eat from this tree, your eyes will be opened. That wasn't a lie. Our eyes were opened. 2 eyes. We used to be souls that only saw with one eye. A clear eye. A vision of consciousness. When we bit from that tree, we actually became densified mortal beings. So now Eve is told you're going to have pain when you give labor because before she didn't need a man, believe it or not. I know that means a lot of good things to a lot of people, but hey Adam, here's your walking papers. I can do this on my own. But really, the woman did not need, because people could create with consciousness. That's all. They could create with consciousness. And when we bit from the tree of judgment, we became densified. Adam was told, you will now know pain when you work. Eve, you will now know pain when you give labor. You can't just do things in consciousness anymore because you started judging. So you're no longer in consciousness. You're in mortality, limitation. Wow, what just happened? We were thinking, what just happened? And we started densifying. When we did, we took on bodies. When we did, we took on 2 eyes. 2 duality is the key to that. 2 eyes, eyes of duality. When we heal, as we learn to forgive, when you do Course in Miracles workbook lessons, for example, there's a reason why partway through he starts to talk about fairly early on, hey, you're going to start noticing that you can probably see little sparkles now and again. You might see lights around people. What do you think he's talking about? Auras and so forth. But he's talking about the gift of clairvoyance. Clairvoyance means clear seeing. So when you see with these eyes, and as much as we struggle to see with these eyes, eyesight is starting to fail more and more and more epidemically. Why? It's we could say there's physiological reasons and all that, and psychological reasons. The bottom line is these eyes never worked in the first place. They never worked in the first place. So they're getting tired because we've been using them to try to pretend they're working. So they're exhausted. And the good news is there's another eye that will open as we grow spiritually through forgiveness, like the workbook lessons in the Course. When I have the humbleness to say, this world is not what I think it is. Everything I think I see is not really what I think it is. Now these eyes are, when you're doing those lessons, they're being retired. You're essentially, in effect, you're saying, I will not, just like a yogi, a master, I'm not going to rely on these eyes to tell me what's real. I think I see such and such. I think I see a chair, but I don't know what a chair is. Those are the kinds of workbook lessons you're doing. This is not like a positive thinking course, that workbook in the Course in Miracles. It's not what it is. It is mind altering. Mind altering. It's changing our whole consciousness. So we're having to recognize, hey, you know what? When I'm in my soul, I see lovingly. To be in my soul, I have to let go of judgments. I have to have humility and say, I don't know what anything's for. So I have 2 kinds of seeing. One is relying on an inner light and one an outer light. Because when you see with your eyes, you have lens and retina and so on. You have different parts, anatomy of the eyes. But when you see with your eyes, it's really just photons going into the eye, just color and light. coming into the eye. But when it has to go through the lens, it has to go through two different, let's call them vesica Pisces-shaped lenses. It goes through a double lens effect when it goes in the eyes. And then when it does, the images get flipped upside down. Because we're seeing a world that's backwards. Everything's wrong. Everything's backwards. Everything's upside down. In other words, when people say to you, well, if there's God, why can't we see it? Because you're disturbed. That's why you can't see it. You lost your mind, and so you started seeing everything upside down. That which is visible became invisible. That which was invisible became visible. That which never was became visible. A world that doesn't exist became visible. And we had to conjure up eyes for ourselves that would make this look okay. So these photons enter the eyes, and then there's this little game they play, and then, that information to the back of the retina flips it again. This information goes in, is crossed over to some degree, crossed over on its way to the brain. So the brain is not, they think the brain is like going, we're processing information. The brain has already been told what it's going to see. You understand? This is now starting to get understood in medical science. The brain already has an opinion of what you're going to see. It's already programmed. The brain is running on programs. Fed to it, believed by it in our soul, in our belief systems, right in here, in our soul. If we say, well, I have issues with men or women or black or white or brown or whatever it is, tall or short, or mountains versus oceans. I like oceans, I don't like mountains. Whatever the opinions are, those are my belief systems in here. And they're typically built upon wounds or old programs. They're never in the now. They're programs. So when something happens, and medically they're starting to understand, the eyes think they see something and they draw it in, but all they're doing is grabbing some photons, like photo. They're grabbing some bits of information, tossing it into the back, into the mind. And incidentally, it goes into the reptilian part of the mind, more or less, the occipital area. The reptilian part of the mind. That's really a great thing. Let the primal reptilian ego part of me make my decisions of everything. I mean, if that's not an accident waiting to happen. Could we not send it to the forebrain where the intuitive part still being discovered? They think, older science, by just a few years, they would say the forebrain is the intellectual. No, they're gradually starting to understand in front of the forebrain intellectual mind is an intuitive part of the brain, just not yet developed much. How's it going to get developed ever if all the information that comes in gets tossed back to the ego? The reptilian, survival, fear-based part of our being, brain-wise. So this is all happening, and this is like almost like a joke. We're seeing the world, and we perceive it upside down. We have to force it right side up again so that we don't panic, so that things can seem almost measurable. Things can seem somewhat sane, but nothing's quite right. And that's why when our lives, it's one reason why when we start to get on the spiritual path, it often, and the more we get on the spiritual path, we often find our world starts to be turned upside down. Metaphorically, think about what it means. It was already upside down. I'm just starting to become aware of it. Well, can I start becoming aware of some really cool things instead of my life being dismantled? That would be kind of a nice notion, but it just doesn't work that way, because when you try to get your life together, you're rewiring everything. And the ego doesn't just say, well, now that I see you're rewiring things, I guess I'll retire. All it does is get ticked off. Who's been in here rewiring things? I'll just start ripping and plugging things back in. Old beliefs. Let's bring your ex back. I'm going to make your mother call you, or just to set you off. And it hurts, and I can say it in playful ways, but sometimes it hurts. Another loss of a job, another loss of a loved one, and that is the dismantling of the world as we know it. But the good news is it doesn't end there. That's like a symbolic of the dark night of the soul. It doesn't end there. The journey of the dark night of the soul doesn't end in the dark night. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But we have two kinds of vision. Our soul has vision, which is clairvoyance, and our ego has vision, which is the one everybody uses. So keep this in mind. Two kinds of vision. Both of them work off of the same thing called light. One of them is an internal light, capital L. One of them is an external light, which is not a capital L. You follow? They both have to work from light. But one of them is fear-based ego. And what it does is it says, okay, how are we going to do today? And it says, we know what to trigger this person with today. We know what will keep them in fear today. Limitation, limiting beliefs today. Here's what we'll do. We'll come up with an illness to make them feel limited. Financial strain, which makes them feel limited. Whatever's going to make us feel limited. The ego is going to say, okay, I'm going to take that dark thought, which is a pattern that we've got, lifetimes perhaps of that. It's going to say, let me access, down, the catalog here. Low self-worth, yeah, maybe some of that today. It'll take a little bits and make a recipe. And then it decides, here's the day you're going to have. And then it will project that out into the world, calling upon just the right people to come and manifest it for you. Oh, we're going to need that person because that's a good low self-worth person to have in your life. Here's another one, rejection. Let's bring a rejection person into your life. Whatever your lessons might be, whatever it wants to bring up today. But when it does it, it's going to then need the light of this world, which is a fabricated light. It's a fake light. And that's where we talk about photons and laws. These laws are going to shoot a false light called photons into your being, make you see something and react to it. Wow, somebody's rejected me today. It was already programmed. It was already allowed. It was already ordered. The ego just order up. It's placed. The order's been placed. And you say, what about free will? You used free will to let the ego do this. You have to take back your power. You've got to step back and say, wait a minute. If this is happening, it can be fixed. And here's what some people do. Some don't even believe they can fix it. But some will say, dear Jesus, please fix that. And that doesn't work. It can help. What has to happen is I take ownership. That somewhere in my belief systems, there must be a belief that this is okay. And guess what? I was mistaken. This is called forgiving yourself. If you say, no, I had nothing to do with it, you've just given permission for the ego to continue treating you like a victim. So there you go again, reversing. Because what I'm telling you is going to sound challenging. It's actually liberating. Everything is seen and heard opposite in our consciousness. We think that sounds terrible that I have to take ownership of something going wrong. I didn't even do it. Keep fighting it. We're not saying you consciously did anything. We're not even saying you're a bad person. But we are saying that while we're not in power, someone is. And it's God. It's not God. It's the ego. You have to choose God if you want God to be your power. But when you choose God to be your power, you're actually returning to your own real power in the first place. It's not like it's some other entity. When we give the power back to God, then we're back in power. When we gave it to the ego, we're disempowered. Another way of saying it is, when you are judgmental, you are disempowered. When you're loving, you're back in your power. That's why when you're being in the loving consciousness, time flies. Because you're more like your real self than you ever were. When you're happy, when things are going well, when you're in the right mind. When I'm in my right mind and it creates a life of greater ease and peace. Doesn't mean I should judge myself and I'm bad because things aren't going well. You can't know for sure what's happening. Maybe I made a bad choice yesterday and it's affecting me today. Maybe. But it could also be that my soul is taking me through a dark night of the soul and doing a cleaning of all my karmic stuff, which is a good thing to do. It just doesn't feel good. But if you saw it for what it is, it wouldn't feel bad anymore. But we're not allowed to see the truth of things because then you would become liberated. So what we do is, I wish I could see things more clearly. You have to believe things more clearly before you can see them more clearly. Wish I could see auras. You have to know who you are, and then that starts to happen naturally. You don't try to see auras so that you can become more spiritual. Just become more spiritual, and that'll happen. And if it doesn't, who cares? You don't see lights. Big deal. Become a nicer person. That's more important. I'd rather you be a nice person and see no colors than to be rude and see purple. Who cares? What's important is being nicer people. And if you don't sweat it and obsess on it, and I can't wait, now that I'm doing spiritual work, I'm going to start seeing auras. Once you do that, you've attached something. You made something into important and God-like. It's a false God. Not to worry. Be nicer, be more loving, be more forgiving. And so when we awaken, we have two lights. The false one out here, that's why the masters and yogis throughout time, they're saying, don't trust your senses. Which sounds weird, and some people have a hard time understanding it because they think, I have to do all these massive vows of abstinence from everything. I got to lay on a bed of nails. I've got to do all kinds of fasting and celibacy and so on to really abstain, because they said don't trust your senses. So what they're saying is starve your senses. That's actually a misinterpretation. There's a gentler way of doing it. Just stop believing your senses. Instead of fighting them and proving them wrong and starving them, just stop believing in them. And you can do that casually. Wow, isn't this weird? Today it looks to me like it's raining. And that makes me bummed. I don't like the rain. But isn't that weird? Because I know the rain is just a perception. It can't really be real. It's not happening. And what I think it controls me emotionally, that's impossible since I'm a divine being. Angels can't get bummed when it's raining. Angels don't go, well, we were going to bring miracles today, but there's an overcast day. Angels aren't affected. You're as great as the angels. So technically, we need not and cannot be affected by such things as the weather or anything else. But it's okay to feel like you are and be able to laugh at it. To say, wow, all the pollens, man, and this time of the year here, it really can affect a lot of us, and so on. But don't fight that it's affecting you. Don't shame yourself for it affecting you. Just be able to say, isn't it funny that I created the entire universe and there's pollen that I sometimes can't even see the little micro levels of it, and it enters my body and wreaks havoc? To be able to see it and laugh at it. Man, that's ridiculous. Even if it brings you to your death, a little germ enters your body and causes you death. As long as you go to the grave laughing, that germ is a part of me, and I'm using it to exit. I could have used anything. You're going to use something. I'm going to exit this year. Let's see. I'll take germs for 20, Alec. Like it's Jeopardy or something. I'll take accident for 50. It doesn't matter, because the soul's going, what does it matter? We're just going. We're just going to use something to make it make sense to us. You could also just ascend. You want to do that? I don't believe I can do that. Exactly. So we're going to get you a germ instead. Just until our beliefs catch up. I think I'll go now, like Yogananda did. He's just doing a talk. He says, watch. He sat down and left. Kind of trippy. Body never decomposed. Kind of freaked out the LA coroner. This guy's body isn't decomposing. Is he still alive maybe? And we just don't think, don't know that he is. We better check. And he just remained for days and days, weeks and weeks and so on. As they studied him, he just didn't decompose. It's because consciousness, there's a level of consciousness. And you're not trying to compete or compare with, I wish I could do what yoga. Forget that. Be at peace with whatever you do. That's the key. If you're at peace with how you go, then you're enlightened. It's all right. As enlightened as you can be at this point, you did it. You did fine. Judging, that you should have done it more smoothly. I should have left a lot of light as I was leaving the room. It's not going to help you. The judgment's going to take away any light anyway. Anyway, light. It can happen from the outside. That's the illusion. And all it's doing, because there's film, and the light goes through the film and projects onto the world. So what we're doing is we're saying, I have a belief system. Then the belief system, the ego's creating slides, and then shooting outside light. It's forcing a false light, photons and whatnot, through our slides so that we can see what we already believe. And if we could recognize, I'm not liking what I'm seeing. Oh, that must be my belief systems were off. So whatever belief system's behind this, I surrender it to you, God, and I welcome in a whole new belief system. And that's what it looks like. It's simple. We just have to practice it more. See, something's off. People have started saying, if you want to know if you're okay or not, check your feelings. The Course tells you that from beginning to end. How are you feeling inside? It doesn't just mean human emotion. It's check your peace level. How centered do you feel? A little off, there's a little judgment. Majorly off, majorly judgment. But the point is, how are you feeling? So, when life's kind of falling apart in some way, it can only be reflecting where I and we collectively had misthought something. Don't care where it came from. I'm going to own that I played a part, and I'm going to forgive myself by surrendering it to God and asking for something new. But I have to forgive myself. Now, when I practice forgiveness, here's what starts to happen. The slides that the ego used to have the right to put up and then shoot photons through it to give me an idea of what I'm seeing, something changes. All of a sudden, an inner light starts to happen. An inner light. And the third eye, the clairvoyant eye, which is sort of a collaboration between the pineal and pituitary glands. The pineal starts getting excited, wiggling its little tail. And it's kind of like the flautist, flute player in your Far Eastern traditions with the serpent rising. So the song of God starts to play up here, and the serpent Kundalini starts to rise. It's kind of, they call it a fire, but it's a light. The light starts to rise. And the little tail is excited and calling it forward. And the master gland, the pituitary, and the pineal, they're singing a song, the divine feminine and masculine. They're having an alchemical union, marriage up here. And the Kundalini, it's rising. And as it rises, bing, bing, it's activating chakras on the way up. Problem is, if you have any weird stuff stored in any of your chakras, it's like, ow, what was that? Oh, it must have been just my Kundalini. You'll have these odd reactions and sensations, but sometimes it's just the Kundalini. And it's moving and grooving and kind of rising, hearing the song of God, purging away anything unlike that divine song. So it moves upward and upward. And when it gets up here, this whole web in the mind, in the skull, starts to activate. The right and left brain become one brain. The forebrain, the back, everything starts to become enlightened. All the neurons start, those of you who did my Revelation class will remember that the 24 cranial nerves, 12 pairs, 24 cranial nerves, those are the elders in Revelation that start singing songs to God. That's my up here, the 24 elders are the main cranial nerves in the head, and they start to activate. So there's this, woo, wow. And there's a light inside. And science is going, we don't understand what the pineal's for because it's light sensitive and there's no light inside the head. There is. It's called God. Dude, come on. What's wrong with you, man? It's called God. Your Einsteins and others knew this stuff was true, but our minds got hijacked by the ego. Our brains got hijacked by the ego. Therefore, sciences and religions and governments got hijacked by the ego because they're run by minds, or mindlessness, technically. It's mindlessness, because when you gave it to the ego, you're no longer in power, so it's mindlessness. So that's why they'll conjure up all kinds of amazing things that they think are great. Scientific developments and whatever else it happens to be, theorems and theories and this and that and the other. All of that is vanity. When the light activates inside, there's a knowingness, not a thinkingness. There's not an ingenuity of the intellect. There's a peace that comes from a knowingness. And all of a sudden, like the mind opens, and all of a sudden this eye starts to open. Abracadabra. It starts to open. And then all of a sudden, healers, physicians could see people and see illnesses that were not even registering to the most sensitive equipment. Billion-dollar machines wouldn't be able to see it because it's an energy of a sort that's so subtle, a disease, before it starts manifesting. Catch it then, and you're better off. That's why medical intuitives, if they're authentic, some are not, medical intuitives can see these things and help people heal more quickly, more authentically, more thoroughly. So there's another eye that has to be opened. And it's this whole amazing, process if you think about it. The light has to rise. What do you think it's symbolic of? The Kundalini rising. Your consciousness rising. So you don't want to try to force. You know anybody who can force my Kundalini up? It sounds cool. You don't want to be doing that. You want to raise consciousness and it'll rise. Everybody's got to get back to understanding what organic means. It doesn't just mean you eat trail mix or whatever, just, whatever, smoking organic tobacco, that's not what organic is. Organic is being divine. That's the only real form of organic. And we need to all get back to organic living, which means loving. Loving is organic. Fearing and judging is not organic. It's synthetic. It's fake. As we get back to our real selves, that light comes up and we start to see things as they really are. It's really, really, if you think about it, it's really stupendous. It's amazing. So Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Now that's kind of cool. It means he's awakened. He's a teacher to us. He's the light of God, like a light bearer, a light bringer. No, it also means when you come from my consciousness, you will become a light to where you can see things as they really are. You will have risen in consciousness. You'll awaken and you'll see. He's saying, I'm the light, meaning I accessed it and I'm one with it. So I got it, but you have to get it too. We're all the light of the world. We're all the light of the world. But if we're relying on judgments and then outer perceptions, the outer perceptions are going to shine into our brain and tell us what we're seeing. If we rise and awaken Christ consciousness, we become a light unto ourselves. There's really 3 stages of seeing, if you think about it, 3 stages of light, or 3 stages of seeing. This is when I'm talking about learning to see differently. Human seeing, obviously, the false seeing. But even when we start to see, we're going to shift into seeing clairvoyantly, which means a bit of aura, little chakras, or just, and by the way, some of you go, well, I don't have that. You do have it. It's just that you're interpreting that you don't. But when you sometimes, somebody came to mind, and then they called, you were being clairvoyant. You don't have to think that it's always about eyes. You're not even using your eyes anyway. When people go, I'm going to practice seeing auras. I'm going to use my eyes. You're not actually using your eyes. You just think you are. And you need that because you're too afraid to think you could see auras without your eyes. So you sit around going, okay, I'm going to practice seeing auras. And it's okay to do that because that's part of the game. You have to learn starting with the eyes. The truth is, you can evolve to the point of, let me do this. I'm going to look at your aura. And close your eyes. Because it's not actually your iris, your pupil, it's not your lens. It's nothing like that. It's not the retina that's seeing auras. You're actually feeling them. And then you think a color. Oh, I'm seeing a blue around you. You are, because you think you are. And you're seeing what you believe. But then you come to understand, how would people take it if I said, I'm feeling a blue aura? What does that mean? You're feeling it. Yeah, I'm looking and I can feel you have a blue aura. Oh, there's an orange aura, whatever it happens to be. Humans don't comprehend that, but it's true that it comes from feeling. So we have this divine self inside. And we're going to go from clairvoyant vision, then you start to have more profound versions of that called revelations. Like the book of Revelation is the final book of the Bible because it's when God itself starts to be revealed to us again. So we start with clairvoyance, then we go to revelation, and then complete divine vision again. But you got to start somewhere. When do I get that divine vision? Wait. Let's just start with practicing that what you think you see doesn't have power over you. When you see an illness and you think it has power over you, work on that one. No, I want to get to divine vision. You don't jump to divine vision when you still think something out here has power. This person, they're degrading me and I can't heal because they're so big, they're so loud. It's all perception. They have no power over you. Why do you think one of the patriarchs of the Bible could go into a lion's den. And they're saying, toss him in there. Well, let's get rid of this guy. He goes in there and he makes friends with the lions. Because he's saying, like St. Francis, if I don't perceive hatred, what are the lions going to attack? They would only see light because I am light. Yogananda said, even a mosquito coming after you, it's only going off, coming after you because it perceives something, a fear or something that it's attacking. It's biting, but it's a symbol of something inside. Your own biting attitudes. And so be it. It doesn't mean you should okay, this year I'm going to so that no mosquitoes come after me. I'll spray a lot of that, whatever the anti-bug stuff is, spray it all over yourself and then no mosquitoes come after you and that means you're enlightened? No. You can't fake it like that. Just laugh at it. Just recognize. What are you? Here's this thing. What are you? Whoa, you're that. You're a symbol of that. My biting thoughts, my stinging words, or whatever it happens to be. When we see it, we can surrender it. It'll change it. The world, whether it's the dog whisperer telling you, your dogs are just responding to your feelings. The dog is biting because it's anxious, and it's anxious because you're anxious. No, I'm not. I'm perfectly fine. No, you're not. You have an anxiousness, and it transmits down that leash to the animal, and it's reacting to you. And you're blaming the animal. Watch that dude when he does his work. He's like, I don't even want to talk about that. He won't even look at the animal most of the time. He's like, why should I look at the animal? You're the one with the problem. Talk about offensive, right? Hello, could you fix my dog? No, I'll work on you though. You've got problems. It's like, so, and he can prove it to these people. He can prove it to them. And when he works on their anxieties, the dogs chill. And it's amazing. It looks like he healed the dog. He healed the owner. And so it looks like you're healing your life, but you're healing the owner of your life. And I love how this whole thing works because between the iris and cornea and parts of the eye, other anatomy, our spiritual anatomy starts to get activated. There's a spiritual I within us all. I am changes that meaning to that word I. I am is like abracadabra. I said that last week. And it starts to open that secret chamber. As I recognize I am and I start to live and think and act more like God, you could start with God would have me, but really it's God is. So I open up the I am, and then my eye opens with my I am. And everything starts to change. You got it. I start to see everything differently. I realize when I'm silent, try, when you meditate and get silent, notice that it's not easy all the time to control your thoughts. That's a metaphor of what happens on a day-to-day basis. On a day-to-day basis, what happened from the beginning of time with the ego is, if you try to be still, the ego is going to throw things in your face to try to distract you. Because if you start to get silent and you get really, found the true silence, not just moments of it. The more you find silence, the more you're getting in touch with God. Not because God is silent, it's on the other side of the silence. And the ego can't have that. So it needs to distract you, keep you upset. And you think I'm talking about just meditation and silence? No, I'm talking about even when I think I've got my relationship stuff kind of sorted out. It'll throw stuff to throw that off. So it's not just visions when you meditate. Even stuff that when you think your finances come together, some crisis comes along and ruins you financially again. Those patterns, that's the stuff we have to heal, not the symptoms. My belief systems create my patterns create my symptoms of my life, and everybody sits around trying to fix the symptoms. And it doesn't work, mainly because they're not there. The symptoms are just illusionary. When our information and photons shoots into our eye, it goes onto a plate in the back, the retina. It's like a plate, a photographic plate. And then the image gets reversed again and shown to our brain eventually. Here's what we just saw. But it never really works, truly. When they do holographic work, now that they've developed that more and more, they have plates that they use, just like the retina. They use plates to create a hologram of an object, which is not really there. It's a hologram that the light in the experiment has been told is there. It's like an object, but it's just told, the light is told, you're seeing an apple. Very much, it's a simplicity there, it's simplistically speaking. But all of a sudden, on this plate, they can see an apple because the light's been told there'll be an apple. So there's an apple. Same with the retina. It's told there's an apple, but it's not quite what you think it is. So Jesus could walk on water because he didn't believe what he was seeing. He didn't go, this is gonna be a really tough miracle today, man. I mean, the waves are big. Bring it down a notch and I might, swim. You want me to walk on water? When you get it, you get it. You get it completely. When you get it, you don't fight to get it like more, wear down the illusions more. When you actually get it and the light completely goes on, you go, wow. Like the reluctant Messiah in Richard Bach's Illusions. He swims in the earth and walks on water, or something to that effect. It's like that. You realize, wow, I'm manufacturing the entire thing. It's just a game. I get it. That's what it means. I woke up. I get it. This is actually a game. It's a three-dimensional hologram like a movie. And so when I watch a movie now, you go, wait, if you've ever been in Hollywood and you go backstage and you see them doing makeup on a creature that's going to be in a movie, as a creature, layer upon layer upon layer. You could take a 5-year-old and let them watch, even help put the makeup on, and they won't be as scared when they see the movie, right? Why? Because they owned their participation in watching it be developed. It doesn't have the same sting. Show somebody who doesn't, and look what happens. Oh, whoa. I mean, people were startled at a mechanical shark. Dun, 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 and people, it's mechanical. But why do you? Because you want to believe it. You're in the movie, forgetting that you're even watching a movie. Horrible things they show in the movies. But it is a movie. When I was a kid, because my dad was a stuntman, I used to live in these sets, in the film sets and all that, Big Valley and all these shows in the 60s. I used to hang around these places all the time. But I remember, we'd watch something like Bonanza, it was pretty popular in those days. And, and God, it just happened sometimes. Like, little Joe got shot once. And my mom, oh my God, is he going to live? My dad goes, I don't know, man. And he's kidding with her, I don't know, this is looking bad. She goes, shut up, He got shot. Oh, you're right, man, it's looking bad. I don't think little Joe's going to make it. Pretty soon it'll just be, Haas and the other guy nobody knows the name of. Anyway. But he saw it being made, so to him it's all silly. You know what I mean? He sees through it. All we need to do is practice understanding that we create it and we won't react to it as much. That's one of the secrets to it. That's why I was starting off this talk with responsibility. When we recognize we're behind it. The ego wants you to make you believe. The ego wants you to think that you don't have any say-so. And that everything is a movie that's sneaking up on you, and it's three-dimensional, because it's a hologram, it's a three-dimensional movie, and it's going to get you. What is the it that's going to get me? There's no it that I didn't choose or create. Oh, this one could be a virus. We created that. This could be a darkness outside. It's middle of the night, no moon. It's dark out. A bear, or whatever. Nothing happens by chance. It's all dreamt of by me and us. Because there's an individual creation colliding with, or collaborating in some ways you can call it, with the collective beliefs. And all this needs to be retired. And we start to realize the reason you can manifest gold, a gold coin in a fish like Jesus, because it doesn't matter. It's all an illusion. And people want to minimize miracles and say, well, some of those things are misinterpreted. No, they're not. These things actually happened. Even a resurrection actually happened. Because it's an illusion. I'm going to dream death. I'm going to dream awakening. See? And with relationships and partnerships. They left me. I'm devastated. It's There's a part of me that I remember when I got divorced and all the pain of that. I've shared this before, but I remember the pain of that. And then I was literally sitting outside, just sobbing and recognizing how painful this was. But then I started laughing. And I went, shh, stop that. You're supposed to be in pain. But then I would cry and then laugh. And I go, wait, I thought, like, this is like almost hysterics. Because part of me was going, you knew this was done. No, but I'm shocked and oh, this is just terrible. But I knew, so I would start laughing, going, dude, come on, really, dude, come on. I mean, you knew what was going on. Yeah, I knew. And so I would laugh and cry at the same time. That's how we are. We're afraid to say, before they moved away or moved out or surprised you in some form, you're clairvoyant. You're able to see clearly. You already know what's happening. But my one and only love, they died and it was a surprise. They knew and you knew. It's all known before it happens. And it's okay. It's okay that you want to pretend that you didn't know. Then let's cry together and that's okay. But as we awaken spiritually, we realize nothing happens by chance. Nothing by accident. Nothing snuck up. What's it going to sneak up on? How do you sneak up on God? Bet you didn't expect this one. Yes, I did. It's known. Jesus is coming to the end of his life. Judas, that thing, that betrayal thing you're kind of planning, why don't you just go and do it? I would never. Come on, dude, come on. Really? Talk to the hand. Go. We both know he's clairvoyant. He's not going to go, oh, Judas, how could you? Peter, you're going to deny me. I would never. You just knock it off. You're going to do it. I can see it. It's just things become more and more apparent. It becomes known in us. When you are starting off more and more developing your psychic skills, which is wonderful, do it. You want to do it, it's great. But you'll start off thinking you're developing a thing. You'll evolve to a point, no matter who we are, you evolve to a point where there's a knowingness. You know things. When even people come to me, for sessions and so forth, and then they write and they post things online and Facebook and all that. Man, he knew this about me and that. It isn't me doing like a sort of a psychic hoping that I'll get information. As soon as we're there, as soon as we're together, it starts downloading, just like a talk. It more or less just starts downloading. And that's where we're all going, more and more into a knowingness. The way a mother kind of knows when her child's in trouble. That is not a figuring or conjuring or a working the head. There's a knowingness. And it's true that a good animal owner knows the animal might be sick or knows. Why is it that those kinds of connections can be made? We call it psychic development when it's in some other field. It's all the same. You know what's behind them all? Love. The mother knows about her kid because she loves the kid. The owner knows about its animal because it loves. But humans don't have as much an easy time loving each other. As we do, healers more and more will start to know what's going on with their client. Counselors, they don't have to pigeonhole in here, you're this type and that type and so on. There's just a knowingness of what's going on and how to navigate our way out of that. So when people come to me, there's just a feeling of knowingness, but I've always credited love, not myself. I was born with such a genetic, or no. I don't credit things other than a feeling, a love. You love people and you start to know things. So as I'm starting to come to a close, there's this whole idea, that we are the light of the world. What that means is, instead of the world being the light to me, which means photons for me to see, we are the light of the world. I'm going to start seeing a world from inside out. I'm going to start seeing love beamed out. And love is the greatest light. And light is, coming from love. So when I let love come out, it illuminates and I start to see the world differently. It really happens. The ego won't always let you see it immediately, but it happens. You start to see the world differently. People you might have judged or been angry at or whatever, reactive to, it just starts to shift. Everybody in this room, everybody watching the program has had this happen at least once in their life. They may not have known what it was, but love or light started beaming from inside out, and I saw someone differently. I saw you looking beautiful today. Wow, you look wonderful today. But something in me had to shift before I could see you looking beautiful today. Wow, that's a great outfit, great colors. It's ego or it's God. And all I have to do is ask myself how I'm feeling to know where that came from today. Am I really just going to play off of, I'm a leg man, and people looking at body parts to decide whether someone's attractive? That's not coming from God. God doesn't separate anything, least of all bodies, segments of bodies. It's a feeling of love. And I said this many times. Even though you'll feel love for everyone. It starts to become this magnificent, like, God, I feel so good. You can still choose, I'll not live with all 8 billion of them. You might work out. What do you think? And make choices. When people realize that loving someone as a choice is more flattering than any other reason people think they love somebody. To say, I love everyone, but I'm choosing to be intimate with you. I'm choosing to live with you. I chose you as my kids, or whatever it happens to be. When we recognize that, it does kind of allow them to feel somewhat unique. I don't want to use the word special and have it misinterpreted, but there's a unique place there, and that's kind of cool. But everything has to change, and everything is changing. Globally, the world is changing. When we look at vision starts to change, your brain gets rewired. Your genetics are not fixed, man. I've said that all my life since I've been teaching anyway, 40 years or whatever it's been. Your genetics are not fixed. They will tell you it's fixed. It is not fixed. In fact, it's the whole premise of, if we understand DNA, the whole premise is about change. And they're making the whole thing about, this is your fate. And it's funny because everything's backwards and upside down. So even DNA, it's all a lie. And the DNA is this double helix, or 2 strands, let's say, DNA. There are beings with more than 2 strands of DNA, but let's say 2 strands of DNA. Every time those strands fold, that folding has a unique energy in it. They're just trying to read the particles of the DNA to decide this means this and this means that. In the DNA, there is light that's going to be activated more and more. Humans are using DNA to try to calculate and manipulate. We're going to try to be our own versions of creators. Does that sound like the ego or not? It's totally the ego. We're going to harness the power of the DNA, and that makes us gods. No. Because they'll never get all the way to it, because they don't know light, because light is love and light is God. And if you go after it with science, you're not going to get it, because you're coming from your head. So instead, in the DNA, the sciences are going to go after that. There's even the ancient alien theorists. Well, one day the aliens are going to ring a bell and everybody's, strands are going to activate according to their will. That's just a second theory. That's another level. But there's also God's divine plan. God's plan is that when we reach a spiritual critical mass, light will be activated in the DNA, as well as up here, pineal pituitary, as well as in the cranial fluid moving through the spine, the kundalini, etc. We're multi-layered beings, and all of it has to turn to light, including genetically. So it's kind of cool, because if you think about it, every time these the strands kind of cross, they call that a pi situation, because when these cross, pi meaning the 16th letter in the Greek alphabet, but pi is this amazing ratio, because no matter after the decimal, it can go on infinitely, and it's an infinite decimal number. But the symbol for pi, these 2 lines like this and 1 cross piece, is the same as you see in many of the Druid megaliths. Why? Because those people were dealing with consciousness changing. Consciousness. Which means pi is about consciousness. The symbol pi is about consciousness. So when the 2 strands of DNA cross, you actually have the symbol of pi at each side of that. All right, not literally, visually, but energetically, mathematically, you have pi ratio. Now, that pi is also going to look like an 1111 on each side of that crossover. which then starts to tell us, wait a second, now you're talking about the doorway in Orion constellation known as this critical point where light comes from the highest part of the universe and through Arcturus. I know this is getting weird for a second, but then through Orion and to the Earth plane, because we're going to get everything on every level has to be changed. So just like Arcturus and Orion have to be changed, so too does your mind and your heart. And then into the earth plane and into this earth plane, that light comes at a purer level. Because pi, that infinite ratio, that infinite number, is a symbol of consciousness changing. So what they have not found is light at those crossovers and a light strand that runs right through the middle of the DNA double helix. They haven't found that yet. They're not going to, because you can't find it with your head. You can't take a telescope and actually find God, a microscope and find God in a literal sense. So they're going to play with DNA, and it's not going to work on that scientific level. But you and I are currently changing. And your DNA is changing. And it will continue to change. More than ever in history, we are not the product of our families, thank God. But we are not the product of our family. If your father was a rageaholic, doesn't mean you're fated to that. If your mother was an alcoholic, doesn't mean you're fated. I know there's propensities, but the propensities are believed in by us and therefore lived out. Someone steps up and says, not today. God is my parent. I would like God's genetics, please, instead. And something starts changing. You start to become liberated. You start to become a free soul. Born again. It all says the same thing and means the same thing. All humans are going to go through these changes. All of us. It's not like only nice people. The not so nice are going to learn too. The easy way or the hard way, but everybody's going to wake up. When you wake up, you become more the light you were in the beginning. You start to see as light, feel as light, live as light. The genetics are going to change. The DNA is going to change. The mind's going to change. The wiring of the brain's going to change. The neurons start to fire differently. It's a whole symphony. It's amazing if you think about it. It's a whole dance of light all around us, but really more importantly, all within me, each of us. I start to turn to light. Jesus did that in a split second when he said, now. Just like Yogananda said, goodbye, and he faded out. He left his body. Jesus said, now. He held it back and held it back and held it back and then said, wait for it, now. And he turned to light and it left a photographic image on the cloth that is an authentic shroud cloth of his body. Because he turned to light, and that intensity of light can actually leave a burned in replica of what the image that's shining through it. So he did. He turned to light and poof, it was like a flash burn of sorts. It just flashed. And there it was. And that's going to happen for you and I. The thing is, understand that it is happening. That's why unusual health issues for people. It's why there are things that weren't there 10 years ago and they're there now. Sensitivities to your body. You cannot betray the Christ gland, your thyroid, and your spoken word and not have some ill effects in the body that's an effect of our consciousness. Misuse the power of your spoken Christ I am words, such as hates and judgments, and the body that is a response, a reaction, an effect of the mind is going to show ill effects. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. This could be lifetimes of this stuff being purged off in this lifetime. But time is disappearing, so we're happening now. It's all happening now. It's all happening suddenly. God, everything's happening so quickly. Yes, because there's no time. The faster it all happens, the more you're becoming in the moment. It'll get faster and faster, which can be annoying, a faster and faster kind of a thing. More and more tests and challenges, which is annoying, but it happens faster, 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 faster until, boom, it's all changed in the now. We're not choosing for this to last forever anymore, which is a good thing. We're saying it's okay. Let's just relax and let it happen. Please take a few centering breaths. Setting aside all stuff of the world and our thinking. And let's for a moment, each of us imagining that we're standing, for example, up on this stage. Just picture yourself standing in front, in a room. And then picture that people are in the room that represent your past. People you've liked and not liked. Enjoyed time with, struggled with. One by one, they walk by and they just lightly touch your chest or shoulder, whatever feels right for you, but they slightly touch your heart center area and they walk by. Ones you liked, didn't like. And imagine that each time they're doing it, you're noticing they're leaving an index card stuck to you, a post-it stuck to you, whatever the case may be. They're each walking by and leaving something with a word on it. And the word is the word you associated with that person. Kindness, betrayal, rage, hurt. Let them all, like a procession, let them walk by, tap you, and leave something there. One after another. And let them come to a conclusion. Let them all finish walking by. Doesn't matter how far back you go, childhood or yesterday or today. People you've liked and not liked, they all left a little something there. And what's important for us to understand, first, that everyone, we have a label for all of them. This one symbolizes betrayal, that one beauty, or whatever it happens to be. Kindness, nurturing, rage, or whatever it is. They're not even in the room literally, in many cases, causing these things right now. We still associate those words and those people, those attributes and those people, which is technically living in the past. That's the first lesson. That we have these labels on people. That they come from the past, which means we're not in the moment in any of these interactions or relations. And then we also come to realize all those labels we had on them are now on us. The one I thought was rejection stuck it to me. The one I thought was love, that stuck on me. It's me. I have all these labels. Just as I have judged, I now received. If you would like to release people from any of the negative labels, we would have to own that we have those labels ourselves now, that we live in the past with those people. They're not separated from us. We can't label them as bad and send them on their way. We're connected to them. The labels we put on them stick to us. If I want to have a better life, I have to practice surrendering these labels. You don't have to. If you don't want to, you can keep them. If you want to change your life, there's a different choice that has to be made. You don't have to love the hurtful behaviors, of course. It's not what we're saying. You have to, though, choose not to hate the people. You have to choose to learn what you can from the experience. And you have to also affirm that deep in that person, somewhere, is a light made in God's image. What I thought I saw them doing, saying, was with my eyes, and they were doing that literally from their ego eyes. I want to see this differently. I'm ready to see this differently, and I know I can see this differently, but not with my human eyes that will see dualistically. So I'm going to now surrender all these labels that I choose to. You don't have to give up all of them, but whatever ones you're willing to, take them. Unstick them from yourself. Look at them as you unstick them. Rejection and fear and whatever they are. See them. Tear them up. Toss them. See another one. Tear it up. Toss it. Keep whichever ones you need to keep. That's fine. Tear them up and toss them. And in so doing, imagine the room where those people were all there and walking by in a procession. Imagine every card you ripped up allowed the person involved to turn to light, bringing a greater golden light presence into the room. My ability to forgive one after another increases the light, the ratio of light in the room. Take just a minute more with that. I am determined to see differently. I'm determined to see as God sees. I'm determined to have holy vision. And in having holy vision, my vision that's holy blesses the world, blesses the entire world. When I am awake, I'm already seeing light even in people that don't act like light. I'm so alive, so capable of loving even that which seems loveless. I'm alive. And I give thanks that we are all alive and that we all have this light. I give thanks that you now dance with me in this light. And lastly, just fill the room swirling joyously with light. And as light swirls around the room, it swirls up through the spine and the kundalini, and it swirls in the chakras, clearing them, drawing out impurities and just grounding them, dissipating them. I start to become like the wind, moving and dancing. Gradually, quietly, give thanks. Give yourself just a half a minute to do that. Gradually give thanks and feel like you're drawing and breathing that, integrating that into your being.